The air in Atlanta was thick with tension, the kind of energy that made the hairs on your arms stand before a single word was spoken. Scrappy walked into the room with the weight of weeks sitting heavy on his shoulders. His steps slower but sharper than usual, his jaw set, his eyes refusing to dance around like they normally did when he played the role of peacemaker. He wasn't here to joke, wasn't here to laugh things off, and wasn't here to soften the edges of a feud that had been gnawing at him for years. This time his energy was different, and everyone felt it the moment he sat down. Across from him, Kirk Frost leaned back in his chair with that same smug arrogance he always carried, the look of a man who'd convinced himself nothing could touch him. But behind that cool act was something else. An ego bruised, pride wounded from Scrappy checking him on camera, and now burning with the need to regain control. Rasheeda walked in beside her husband like she always did, loyal, unshaken, but her eyes darted nervously as if she could feel the storm brewing. Yandy Smith and Mendeecees Harris arrived next, their footsteps heavy, their expressions tight, the weight of years of judgment and resentment wrapped around them like chains. And of course, Young Jock was already there, half smiling, half anxious, knowing that when this group came together, nothing ever stayed calm for long. The room was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful but threatening. Every sip of water, every shuffle of chairs, every cough echoed louder than it should have. Then Kirk leaned forward, his voice calm but sharp, laced with the kind of sarcasm that was meant to wound. "Funny thing about loyalty," he said, eyes cutting straight at Scrappy. "Everybody talks it, but not everybody built for it." His words hung in the air like smoke. Scrappy's head lifted slowly, his eyes locking on Kirk with the stillness of a man who'd already had enough. His tone was low, but every syllable landed heavy. "Loyalty? Don't start with me, bruh. Handle your own house before you throw shade on mine." The air snapped. Rasheeda froze, her hand tightening on Kirk's arm. Yandy shifted in her seat, her lips parting in surprise. Mendeecees leaned forward, his hands clasped, watching with quiet intensity. Jock muttered, "Oh man," under his breath, but no one dared to laugh. Kirk chuckled, but it wasn't genuine. It was forced, brittle. "You really gonna sit there and tell me about loyalty? After everything? Don't get it twisted. I built mine, I kept mine, and I don't answer to you." His words grew louder with each line, and Rasheeda's hand gripped tighter as if she could pull him back from the edge. But Scrappy wasn't backing down. He rose from his chair, shoulders squared, his voice no longer low but rising with years of frustration. You built yours? You've been tearing your own house down for years. You embarrassed that woman next to you on national TV, dragged her through hell, cheated, had a baby with Jasmine, and still got the audacity to point fingers at me, at Mendeecees, at anybody but yourself. His words sliced the air, leaving silence in their wake. Rasheeda gasped softly, her eyes wet but her lips tight, refusing to let anyone see her break. Yandy's jaw dropped, her eyes flicking from Kirk to Rasheeda to Scrappy, as if she couldn't believe the words were finally being spoken out loud. Kirk stood abruptly, his chair screeching across the floor. The two men were chest to chest, their faces inches apart, voices overlapping now. "Watch your mouth, bruh," Kirk snapped. "You don't know nothing about what I built. You think you go and stand here and check me in front of cameras?" Scrappy's finger jabbed toward Kirk's chest, his voice booming, raw with years of swallowed anger. "I don't think I know, and I ain't scared to say what everybody else been too quiet to admit. You the problem. You the reason every event turns into a war zone. And I'm done carrying your mess." The women screamed as the shove came out of nowhere. Kirk's hands pushed against Scrappy's chest, and Scrappy stumbled back, his face twisting with fury before he lunged forward. His fist flew, grazing Kirk's jaw, and chaos erupted instantly. Jock jumped up, trying to wedge himself between them, yelling, "Chill! Chill!" But his arms weren't enough. Mendeecees rose too, pulling Scrappy back, but not before Scrappy shoved hard against Kirk's shoulder. Kirk swung back, his pride refusing to let him fall, his hands flailing as producers rushed in to separate the two men. The set erupted with noise, women screaming, producers shouting, cameras zooming in, security storming the room. Then the shift happened. Scrappy clutched his side, his face twisting in pain. At first, everyone thought it was just exhaustion, just the adrenaline, but then his knees buckled. The screams grew louder. Yandy shouted his name. Rasheeda covered her mouth. Kirk froze in shock, his pride cracking into fear. Scrappy's voice was faint, trembling as he collapsed into the arms of two producers. "I'm tired, man. I'm done with this." His words barely carried as his body slumped forward and panic flooded the room. Within minutes, paramedics rushed in. The flashing red lights outside painted the walls, the stretcher rolled in, and the cast stood frozen, their faces pale. The cameras caught every second, Scrappy being lifted onto the stretcher, his chest rising and falling weakly, his eyes fluttering closed. Jock's hands shook as he tried to calm Rasheeda, who whispered, "Oh my God," over and over. Kirk stood stiff, guilt flickering in his eyes, though his lips stayed tight, as if his pride wouldn't let him admit what had just happened. Yandy's tears streamed silently, her hand clutching Mendeecees' arm. The ambulance doors slammed, the sirens wailed, and just like that, Scrappy was gone, taken to the hospital as the group stood shattered in silence. The set was in chaos, but in the middle of it, a new voice cut through. The kind of voice that made everyone's head snap up, the kind of entrance you could feel before you saw it. Tasha K walked in, her heels striking the floor with confidence, her smirk daring anyone to challenge her. The cast froze, their emotions raw, their nerves already fried. "Oh, don't get quiet now," Tasha's voice rang, smooth but cutting. "Y'all fighting so hard, sending men to the hospital, but none of you ready for the truth. And trust me, I got the truth. Receipts, recordings, the whole thing. And when I drop it, you'll see exactly why this Frost versus Harris drama ain't ever gonna end." The room turned to stone. Rasheeda's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing at Tasha like she wanted to silence her, before another word slipped out. Yandy groaned, shaking her head, already muttering about clout chasing. Kirk shifted uncomfortably, his bravado dimming at the sight of Tasha waving a folder in her hand. And Mendeecees leaned back, a half smirk on his lips, knowing chaos had just walked through the door. Jock whispered, "Oh Lord, here we go again," his voice trembling. The fight had left the group shaken. Scrappy had been rushed to the hospital, but now with Tasha standing in the middle of the storm, the chaos wasn't slowing down. It was only just beginning. The ambulance sirens faded into the distance, but the echo of chaos still rattled through the set. Rasheeda sat stiff in her chair, her hands trembling though she tried to keep her face composed. She whispered Kirk's name over and over, but he didn't respond. Kirk Frost stood frozen, pacing in short circles, his chest heaving, his face a storm of pride and panic. He wanted to pretend he was unbothered, but the cameras caught it, his eyes darting, his jaw clenched, his pride cracking under the reality that his shove, his push, his refusal to back down had ended with Scrappy being rushed to the hospital. Yandy Smith sat with her hands over her face, her shoulders shaking, her breaths uneven as she replayed the fight in her head. Mendeecees Harris leaned beside her, his arm draped across her shoulder, but his own eyes were narrowed, burning with the frustration of a man who had seen this cycle repeat too many times. And young Jock, usually the clown of the room, sat silent for once, his face pale, his hands locked together in his lap. The reality was sinking in. This wasn't just another fight for VH1 ratings. This was real. Then the cameras swung to the doorway. Tasha K didn't wait for permission, didn't ask if the timing was right. She strutted in with her heels clicking like a countdown, holding a thick folder in one hand and her phone in the other, recording as if she were live streaming to the world. The tension didn't scare her, it fed her. "Oh, don't get all holy now," she smirked, her voice cutting the silence like a blade. "Y'all fighting each other, dragging Scrappy to the hospital, but let's not act like this feud just came out of nowhere. I got the proof, I got the texts, I got the receipts. And once this drops, trust me, ain't nobody looking the same no more." Rasheeda snapped her head toward her, her eyes sharp with rage. "Girl, you got some nerve walking in here right now." "Ain't nobody asked you to—" But Tasha cut her off with a wave of her hand, dismissive, bold, knowing exactly how to play the villain. "Rasheeda, sit down. You've been defending that man through scandal after scandal, and look where it got you. He out here fighting with Scrappy instead of fixing his mess at home. And you know it. Everybody know it." Rasheeda's face burned red, her mouth opening to argue, but nothing came out. Kirk finally found his voice, snapping back with venom. "Don't come in here with your lies and your clout chasing, Tasha. You don't know nothing about me, about my family. You ain't nothing but a blogger with a camera." But Tasha laughed, loud and sharp, leaning forward and slamming the folder on the table. "You think this is about clout? Baby, I don't come empty-handed. I got recordings. I don't come empty-handed. I got recordings. I got screenshots. I got messages from people close to you. You can fool Rasheeda, you can fool VH1, but you ain't fooling me. And I'm about to let the world see exactly what you've been hiding. Yandy groaned, throwing her head back, muttering under her breath. Here we go. Another circus. She stood up, pointing at Tasha. You need to leave. This ain't the time, this ain't the place. Scrappy's in the hospital, we all still shaken, and you walk in here with folders and cameras like this, a press conference? You disgust me. But Tasha's smirk didn't fade. It widened. Of course you'd say that, Yandy. You always the one trying to act like you above it, like you the queen, like you untouchable. But what if I told you some of these receipts? They got your husband's name on them too? The room gasped. Mendeecees' head shot up, his eyes narrowing, his voice low and threatening. Watch your mouth. Don't bring me into your lies. But Tasha leaned back in her chair, sipping water like she was untouchable. Oh, it ain't lies, baby. It's reality. And I got the proof right here. She tapped the folder, her nails clicking against the manila paper, her smirk daring him to challenge her. The tension was unbearable. Rasheeda's face was pale, her loyalty shaken but still holding. Yandy's body shook with fury, her pride tested in ways she didn't expect. Kirk sat stiff, pretending he wasn't rattled, though the sweat on his forehead told another story. And Mendeecees? His fists clenched on the table, his breathing heavy, his pride daring him to stand. Jock, still pale, muttered, "Man, this too much," under his breath, but nobody heard him. All eyes were locked on Tasha. Then, as if the moment needed more fire, a producer rushed in, whispering something into Kirk's ear. Kirk's face drained of color, his eyes wide. Rasheeda leaned in, whispering, "What is it?" But Kirk didn't answer. He stood slowly, his face tight, his voice low. "Scrappy. They say he's stable, but he don't want to see nobody. Not me, not Rasheeda. Not Jock. He said he done with all of us." The words dropped like a bomb. The room fell silent again, the weight of Scrappy's absence hitting everyone at once. Tasha seized the silence, her voice sharp and cold. "Of course he don't want to see y'all. He tired of carrying the baggage you created. And when he gets out that hospital, don't think he coming back here to play middleman. This family feud? It's about to eat itself alive. And I'ma make sure the world watches." The cameras zoomed in on her smirk, the folder still untouched on the table, the cast frozen, the tension unbearable. Scrappy was gone, Tasha was here, and the war between the Frosts and the Harrises had just crossed a line it could never come back from. The night the cameras caught the flashing lights of the ambulance, the entire city buzzed. Social media exploded with grainy clips of Scrappy being wheeled out, hashtags flying across timelines, fans demanding to know what really happened. For days, whispers spread. Was Scrappy quitting? Was he pressing charges? Was this the end of his time with the Frosts and the Harrises? VH1 producers leaned into the chaos, leaking just enough to keep the world guessing. But when the cast gathered again, there was no guessing left. This was the moment the feud either shattered or consumed them all. The room was heavy, the silence thick. Rasheeda sat beside Kirk Frost, her eyes still red from nights of worry, but her loyalty intact. She held her chin high, even as people online dragged her for standing beside her husband through every scandal. Kirk sat with his arms crossed, his pride stitched together like a patchwork quilt, hiding the guilt that gnawed beneath. Yandy Smith walked in holding her head high, her chin sharp, but her shoulders tense. She looked ready for war, her pride shining like armor. Mendeecees Harris followed close behind, his jaw tight, his fists clenched, his eyes flicking to Kirk with fire still burning. Young Jock shuffled in last, his smile forced, his energy nervous, like a man who knew the walls were closing in. And then finally, the doors opened and all eyes turned. Scrappy entered the room. He moved slower, his body stiff, the hospital still fresh on his skin. A faint scar ran across his temple, his movements careful, but his eyes, they burned with clarity. No more confusion, no more patience. He walked straight to the table, sat down, and let the silence stretch. No greetings, no smiles, just stillness. The kind of stillness that made everyone uneasy. It was Tasha K who broke it. She leaned forward, her smirk sharp, her folder still in hand, the weight of her receipts pulling at the air. "Well, look who decided to come back. Hospital wristband still fresh, but I see you ready to face the truth. 'Cause while you were out recovering, I've been sitting on these receipts, and baby, tonight they getting opened." She slapped the folder down on the table, the sound echoing like a gavel. Rasheeda shot up instantly, her voice trembling but fierce. No, not tonight. Not after everything. Scrappy don't need your mess. None of us do. You always come in here trying to tear down families for views, for clicks, for money. Her eyes burned with tears, her voice cracking, but her loyalty to Kirk still wrapped around every word. Tasha didn't flinch. She leaned back, her voice smooth. Rasheeda, you can scream loyalty all you want, but the world already know. Your man been hiding things, and tonight, I'm putting them on the table. Kirk slammed his hand down, his voice booming. Don't play with me, Tasha! I told you before, I don't answer to no blogger. I don't answer to no YouTube. I answer to my family. You ain't family. You ain't nothing but noise. His pride carried his words, but the sweat on his forehead betrayed him. Jock muttered nervously, Man, this finna get ugly, and shifted back in his chair. Mendeecees leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. You should let her talk, Kirk, 'cause if she got receipts, maybe it's time the world sees you for who you really are. You've been throwing shade at me for years, dragging my name, pointing at my marriage while yours been crumbling. Maybe tonight, it's your turn. Yandy nodded, her eyes narrowing. Exactly. Every time something happens, you quick to point fingers at us, at Mendeecees, at Scrappy. But the truth is, you the one always hiding. You the one always lying. Maybe Tasha finally exposing you will make you shut up for once. The folder opened. Papers spilled across the table. Printouts of text messages, screenshots of emails, photocopies of receipts no one expected to see. Tasha's voice carried over the chaos. Here's the truth. Kirk been running his mouth behind all of y'all backs. Throwing Scrappy under the bus, saying Mendeecees can't handle his marriage, saying Yandy just here for fame. But the worst? He been talking deals with producers, setting up storylines, feeding the fire so the Frost name stays on top, no matter who got a burn for it. The room erupted. Scrappy slammed his hand on the table, his voice cracking with rage. So you mean to tell me all this time I've been sitting here breaking my back, fighting battles that ain't mine, and you've been making deals behind closed doors? You the reason I ended up in the hospital, Kirk. You the reason this feud never ends. His voice shook, his chest heaved, his pain pouring out in raw waves. Kirk jumped up, his pride exploding. Man, shut up, you weak. You let your emotions put you in that hospital, not me. Don't blame me for your weakness. The words cut deep, the room gasped, and Scrappy's body stiffened. Rasheeda grabbed Kirk's arm, begging him to stop, her eyes wet, her voice breaking. Please, Kirk, don't do this. Not tonight. But it was too late. Scrappy stood, his eyes wet with fury, his voice trembling but steady. You know what? You right. I ain't weak. I just finally see you for what you are. A man who'll throw anybody under the bus, even your own wife, just to keep your name in lights. And I'm done. I'm done being your shield. I'm done being your friend. I'm done being in this circle. Y'all can destroy each other if that's what you want, but I'm not going down with you. The silence that followed was suffocating. Yandy stared at him with wide eyes, realizing the middleman was truly gone. Mendeecees nodded slowly, almost proud, his smirk faint but real. Jock shook his head, whispering, "Damn," under his breath. Rasheeda buried her face in her hands, her loyalty crumbling under the weight of what had been exposed. And Kirk? He stood stiff, his pride boiling, his face red, his voice lost. Tasha K smiled, her job done, her chaos complete. Well, there you have it. The truth in black and white. Y'all can hate me all you want, but don't hate the messenger. Hate the man who gave me the receipts. The camera zoomed in on Scrappy as he turned his back and walked out, his voice echoing behind him. I'm done with this. Y'all fix it yourselves. The door slammed, the room shook, and the screen faded to black. The room shook, and the screen faded to black.